I'm Sandy McElfresh with the Gloucester Women's Bible Study. I wasn't here last week to do the teaching, but I've heard that Barbara West did a wonderful job. I was called away. I was deployed to the Gulf of Mexico area, Lake Charles, Louisiana, where hurricanes Laura and Delta hit really hard. I was deployed with the Virginia Baptist as a chaplain last week and just got back. And the day that we got back, we were told that one of our cooks tested positive for COVID. So I'm in isolation for a little bit. I feel great. Don't worry about me. I feel fine. I just need to be isolated for a little while the threat is over. I wanted to talk to you today about Abram in chapter 12, the call of Abram and his family. We're going to do just briefly chapter 12 and 13 of Genesis. And wanted to drop back a little bit from that and talk to you about the end of chapter 11 in Genesis, because that's really where Abram's family got started and was introduced. Barbara touched on this a little bit last week, but I think it's worth looking at one more time before we head forward. Look at chapter 11, verse 27. These are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abraham, Nahor, and Haran. And Haran fathered Lot. And Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. Now I'm just going to stop right there, because this family had a horrible tragedy. They had a trauma. They had a death of one of the sons of Terah. His name was Haran. And you could almost feel, if you read this passage slowly enough and carefully enough, you can almost feel the grief around that statement. He died before his father in Ur of the Chaldeans. It's never a good thing that a child dies before the father or the mother, before the parent. Any parent that has lost a child knows the grief and the heartache that Terah was feeling at this point. And then we move on from that. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred. In verse 25, and Abram and Nahor took wives, and the name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren. She had no child. And we all of a sudden feel the brakes put on one more time. Sarah was barren. She was barren in those first generations, from Adam to Noah to Abram. This was the beginning where God said, be fruitful and multiply. And the stigma, the worthlessness of the feeling of not being able to do that with Sarah was another heartbreak for this family, especially for Sarai and Abram. They wanted a child so bad, and they just couldn't do it. They couldn't produce. When we have tragedy happen and things that we're going through life and it just gets wrong, there's a tendency just to stop everything. I want to read this next part to you. Verse 31, Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, his son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, and his son Abram's wife. And they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. They had a destination all the way back from Ur of the Chaldeans. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. Did you get the name of that place? It was Haran. It was the name of the son that died, Haran. Now, I don't know if they got there and named it that, but there's such a picture there for us to take a look at. That name, Haran, means crossroads. It means that Terah and that family sat at the crossroads of their life. They had a plan to move forward. They had a mandate from the Lord to move forward. But they were stuck in that place of grief. In the Haran, the name of that dead son. You ever been there? You ever been stuck in grief? You ever feel like you've got a plan that the Lord has given you, that you are supposed to go forth? You know this. You're supposed to live your life in fullness. He said, I've come to give you life abundant. But you just can't seem to get away from the crossroads. Grief or promise. I think I'll just sit here for a while. And some of us stay in that area of grief after we've lost a loved one or after we have struggled with a personal conflict. Sometimes we stay in that grief for a long time and never quite make it to the promise. That's what happened to Terah. He stayed there until he was 205 years old, and then he died. And I want you to look at the next verse, which is the verse that we start with this week in chapter 12. Verse 1, Now the Lord said to Abram, Go from your country and from your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Abram had a fresh start. He had a starting point again, but he had to walk away from the crossroads of his grief. He had to. And he did. He got up, and the Lord gave him a promise. And you'll see as we go through these chapters, the Lord actually showed up to him, I think, about 3 times in chapters 12 and 13. And you'll see in these chapters that every time the Lord shows up and talks to Abram, he gives him a little bit more detail about what he's talking about. His first thing is, I will make you a great nation. Well, I'm sure Abram is thinking, now that he knows his wife is unable to bear children, I'm sure he's thinking, really? I don't understand how that's going to happen, but all right, I'm going to start walking. I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to bless you. And I'm going to make you a blessing to the nations, to everyone. And those who bless you, I'll bless them. Those who curse you, I'll curse them. But all the families of the earth will be blessed through you. What a dynamic promise. What a thing to say. And Abram started walking. He didn't know where he was going, except he knew that his father wanted to go to Canaan. He knew that the Lord said, that is originally the goal, the Canaan. I looked over in when Stephen was in Acts, when Stephen was getting ready to be a martyr and he was going to get stoned, he made a speech in front of all of the Pharisees and all of the people who were so angry with him and were going to kill him. And it was kind of it was not only history, but some of the things that he said in here was things that the Lord gave him directly right before his death. It's so cool. Let me read it to you. And chapter 7 of Acts, verse 1. The high priest said, Are these things so? And Stephen said, Brothers and fathers, hear me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran. Did you catch that? When he was still in Ur of the Chaldeans. And he said to him, Go from your land and from your kindred and go to the land I'll show you. And he went out from the land of the Ur of the Chaldeans and lived in Haran. And after his father died, God removed him from there into this land which you are now living. We're going to look at that a little bit more in some of the coming weeks, because Genesis is so full. This life of Abraham and the walk that he had with God, the faith that he had in God. It says again and again, Abraham believed and God counted it to him as righteousness. But that promise to him, Abram was 75 years old at this time, and Sarai was 74. She's kind of past the time of being able to give birth. I'm sure that menopause had kicked in a long time ago. And when the Lord said, I'm going to make you a great nation, I'm sure Abram's eyebrows shot straight up. How are you going to do that? But he believed him, and he started walking. And what I love is he went straight over in 12 verse 6 of chapter 12. He went and he worshipped. That was the second time the Lord came to him. Let's go over there to 12 verse 6. Abram passed through the land, the place of Shechem, to the oak of Morah. And at that time the Canaanites were in the land. And verse 7, then the Lord appeared to Abram again and said, to your offspring, I'll give this land. So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. Ladies, can I tell you, at any time, through the hard times, through the times that the Lord speaks to you, it's always a good time to worship and dedicate yourself new to the Lord. We cannot walk a walk of faith without stopping to worship, building an altar. This is where the Lord has brought us. This is where we're going. Maybe I don't know exactly, but I'm going to trust him. It's a statement of trust. And if you'll notice in chapters 12 and 13 that Abram did that 4 times in those 2 chapters. It was the oak of Morah, and then he went over to a place that was between Bethel and a village or a town called Ai. And we're going to talk about that more later. I want you to tuck that under your hat, that the place of promise is between Bethel and Ai. Then he went back after he had that little indiscretion of Egypt and had a little failing that he said to his wife, they're going to kill me because you're really beautiful. And I'm going to go into Egypt, and you just tell them that you're my sister so that they'll let me live. And he got in a little trouble for that. I'll get to that in a minute, but I want to go back to this worship. 4 times he went to between Bethel and Ai twice, and then at the end he went to the oaks of Mamre, and he stayed there. And each time he built an altar to the Lord and worshipped. Oh, girls, that'll preach. That will preach. Wherever you have a decision, wherever you've got a crossroads, a Haran in your life, it's time to stop and worship and rededicate fresh your will to the Father. Going back to, I'm in chapter 12, when he took Sarah into Egypt. I'm giggling because there's a little dog over here he's just very hungry, and he's eating out of his bowl, and he's scooting all the way around the room. That's the background noise that you might be hearing. COVID stuff, huh? We just do this stuff at home. But when he got to Egypt, of course, Pharaoh saw that she was very beautiful, which I got to tell you, 74 years old, she had to be quite a looker. And Abraham knew that because he was afraid of that. And Pharaoh said, I want her. And he started piling on gifts to Abram to have her. And he put her in his harem and was ready to make her his wife sexually. And they started having all kinds of things. Let's take a look at it. In verse 17 of chapter 12, but the Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And so Pharaoh called Abram and said, why? What is this you've done to me? Why didn't you tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she's my sister? So that I could have taken her for my wife. Now then, here's your wife, take her and go. And he gave the men orders concerning him and sent him away with his wife and all that he had. I'm going to put a little bug in your ear at this point. Go back up to verse 16, and we're going to talk about this later on too. But I just want you to tuck this under your hat for a minute and kind of think about it. Verse 16, when Pharaoh was giving all of those gifts to Abram, he said, for her sake, for Sarah's sake, he dealt well with Abram, and he gave him sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, and female servants, female donkeys and camels. Did you catch the female servant? There was one little servant girl that you're going to hear from later on, and scholars believe that she came from, the Bible says she came from Egypt. She was an Egyptian girl. And I have a feeling she was given as a slave, and her name was Hagar. We'll learn more about her later, but I believe that this was the origin. They picked up Hagar in Egypt. Are you with me so far? All right. When he left there in chapter 13, he left with his wife and come up from Egypt, and then you see the separation between him and Lot, where he says, Lot, our people are fighting, our herds are getting mixed up, there's not enough land here in this immediate vicinity, you pick which way you're going to go, and I'll pick which way I'm going to go. I'll take whatever you don't take, and let's separate ourselves. Which, by the way, did you hear over in verse 1 of chapter 12, the Lord say, go from your country and your kindred, your family, get away from them. And he has carried Lot all this time. You see, Abram was not perfect. He was not a perfect man. He started out an idol worshiper in Babylon. Ur of the Chaldeans is Babylon. He's messed up already by taking his family with him. He stopped in Haran, and the Lord had to kind of scoot him along after his father died. And then he just told a half-truth to Pharaoh and said that his wife was his sister, so he would be self-preserved. Abram was not a perfect man. He did make his mistakes. But every time he did, he came back and he worshiped and he built an altar to the Lord and he believed God. And that got him into Hebrews 11, the great hall of faith in that chapter of Hebrews 11, that he was a man of tremendous faith, even with all of his mess-ups. It kind of gives me hope. Does it you? That all the things that I do that have the best of intentions, but it's just, I didn't ask the Lord first. I just went on my way, and I find myself having to rein it back, pull it back in, center myself in the Lord again and say, God, what direction do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? My mouth gets away from me sometimes. Let me back up and be quiet. Let me speak what you say. Ladies, I'll tell you, when that separation happened and Lot picked the luscious, best part, greenest, most fruitful land, course, it also involved the city of Sodom, and he pitched his tent towards Sodom, leaning that direction. But after he left, the Lord came to Abram, and he said, and this is that Abrahamic covenant that we've been talking about, and it's over here in verse 14, chapter 13, verse 14. This is the third time the Lord has come to Abram in these two chapters. And I want you to keep count of these because it adds up to something. The third time the Lord said to Abram, after Lot had separated from him, lift up your eyes and look for a place where you are, northward, southward, eastward, westward, and for all the land you see, I will give to you. See, I'm going to give you what's in the east, what's in the west, what's in the north, what's in the south, all that Lot just took. I'm giving it all to you. Everywhere your foot will walk, I'm going to give it to you as your inheritance. That's awesome. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land. I will give it to you. So Abram moved his tent and came and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which is in Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. Ladies, what are we missing when we're just do our own thing? What are we missing? God has a plan and a promise and a covenant for us. I'm going to bless you. Follow me. I'm going to keep you. Follow me. I'm going to have a spiritual blessing to the rest of the world through you. Follow me. And it doesn't matter if you're 18, 30, 75 like Abraham, or 99. It's all the same. Follow me. Some of you might have been sitting at the crossroads too long. It's time to get up. It's time to go. Get started again. Don't sit there anymore. I love you so much. And I cannot wait to be with you in person again. To all my team, my members, my ladies that are virtual, I love you so much. And I want you to just be blessed today. And look to the east and the west and the north and the south. Look around. See what the Lord has given you. God bless you. I love you.